I learned a lot, obviously, through the 10 years that I spent as the only female undercover in a unit of 92 specialized officers. It's important how we read people. We all think that we've been through the same storm, but we haven't been on the same boat. Some have yachts, some have rafts, but people are people. And how they respond to each other and what they look for and how you manage yourself and all of our insecurities and all of the different things that happen are exactly the same. And it makes a big difference. He goes into witness protection. I asked him, why did you lock me in the house that night? Or in the apartment? What was the deal with that? And he said, you were new. I didn't know who you brought. I didn't know if you were there to rip me off. There were all of these unknowns, all of these different things happening. You walked in there like you owned the place, like there was just something it didn't feel right to have this little girl come in and do that. So I learned a lot that night. I'd learned a lot, obviously, through the 10 years that I spent as the only female undercover in a unit of 92 specialized officers for more than a decade. I learned a lot. Thank you, ladies. Yeah, it was interesting. And the communication styles, of course, are all very, very different. Now, clearly, you're here to talk about, not about drug dealers, right? That's a whole other conference. But people are people, and how they respond to each other and what they look for and how they judge you and how you manage yourself and all of our insecurities and all of the different things that happen are exactly the same. And that particular night stood out in my mind so well because I was anticipating things to go well, or at least I was trying to convince myself of that. Then I was, hit the door of terror, and then things work out. And I start wondering, what is it that I can learn from that? So when I left undercover work, because I ended up marrying someone I met undercover, he wasn't a drug dealer, he was another undercover cop. We had to pretend to be married on this 10-month project. He says undercover went under the covers, and I tell this other romantic story. But essentially, we end up getting married. We decide to start a family. You can't buy crack and talk to the other moms at the soccer pitch. It's just frowned upon. You don't have as much in common with them. So I finished law school and became a prosecuting attorney and did that for quite some time as well. And those same skills came into play. How to read people, how they're responding to what I'm doing, and how to better detect deception. So I studied some of this in graduate school, and of course I had intensive training in my law enforcement days and my legal days, and I continue with research and study in these topics. So I want to bring to you the latest information to help you negotiate more effectively at times and definitely take more off the table. So the first thing we're going to talk about is display, and that is the only thing that any of us have any control over. And that'll become more significant as we go on. The next is decoding what the responses are. So even though someone is saying something, what they actually do or what they actually intend is oftentimes very different. It's like that iceberg in this picture. What we hear and the information that we get from their words is often just what's above the water. There's so much more below that we're missing. And the majority of communication is nonverbal communication. So we want to know exactly what's happening, or as close to exact as we possibly can get, because if we are in a position to better understand and to decode nonverbal cues, that puts us in a better negotiating position. And the third is all around detecting deception. And I split that often into two. You can only have so many D's on a slide. But there's also detecting aggression and violence. And unfortunately, I know that many of you in your careers face challenges that would have been unimaginable at different times. And violence is becoming more and more prevalent in all workspaces. And I was looking at research around realtors on your national website, and it was shocking to me to see how prevalent that is. But we'll get into just a little bit, but mostly we're going to focus on deception detection. So we see people, they tell us things. They want to work with us. They want to be a part of our brokerage. They want to work in this particular location. They're committed, they're loyal, they're whatever. But their actions don't communicate that usually very quickly. So what if we could figure that out beforehand? What if we had some tools that we could better understand people's intentions? the way to do that are these rules, and I know that realtors love acronyms, as do cops and lawyers and doctors and everybody else. So I put together the ABCs, what I call. They're very easy to remember. And the first is attaching meaning to just one thing. So often we see something, somebody does something, we think it means they're lying, they don't like us, they like us, they're attracted, they're not attracted. We attach this meaning, this significance to one single thing. And I would encourage you not to do that, because if and when we do, we're usually wrong. We're not getting all the info. The next is bias, and bias, of course, we have negative and positive. The negative biases, you've probably all had much training on that. But we often forget about the positive. You've all heard know, like, trust. Well, the know part, people knowing you often give them more of a benefit of the doubt. You overlook indiscretions. You overlook things because you like them, because you know them. So in detecting deception, that is a fatal flaw often. And the third is context. So how we're operating at work, at our brokerages, at our offices, can oftentimes be very different from how we're communicating with people at home, in our personal life, with acquaintances. So context is very, very important. Now, I've heard that you are a very competitive group. And I was at the VIP last night, and I can see that. So I'm not sure if we're able to raise the house lights a little bit, because I'd love to be able to see people a little bit better. This is what I do. I read you. I want to be able to see you. And if we can't, it's no worries. I trust all of these people. So I brought a prize for a little game I like to call Oh Sit. And it works like this. I ask everyone to stand, and the last person standing wins. But it's not just about pride. I know that you guys don't want to leave empty-handed. So I brought this. Now, don't all rush the stage at once, because if you do, it could get dangerous. It is the Trust Agent hot and cold tumbler. But that's not all, folks. There's more. Inside, I have put some American currency. I'm from Canada. I don't know if you recognize my accent or not, but I didn't bring Canadian dollars, so I want you to actually be able to buy something and put American dollars in here. Now, based on my former career, the fact that money has been in here, you might want to wash and sanitize this before you actually decide to. I've seen where some of the money's been. You don't want to go there. Okay, here's how it's going to work. So if everyone could stand. And we're going to go through 5 questions. Oftentimes I have 10, and no one ever makes it past question 7, including former FBI agents. I had 200 undercover narcotics agents a month ago. Nobody makes it past question 7. But we have 5 questions today, and they're more tailored to this audience. So let's see where we go. So it's very simple. First one, people are most likely to tell higher stakes lies when they are A, texting, or B, on the phone. Raise your hand if you believe it is texting. Okay. Please have a seat if your hand is raised. So people tell more lies texting. You know, maybe you're newly in a relationship and you pick up their phone and you see an eggplant and a peach. They tell you they've been grocery shopping. That's the list. You believe them. But higher stakes lies happen on the phone. And sir, why do you think that would be? Gut feeling. Okay, well, that's not the right answer, but I appreciate your honesty. Anyone else? Yes, sir. So texting, there's a record of it. Phone, there's not a record, because often people don't believe they're having their phone calls recorded. That's correct. You know, even when we were doing wiretaps, I'd be listening to the guys talk on the phone, and in the first minute, they're like, "Don't say anything, man. Like, I think they're listening. I heard clicking. My old lady heard clicking." And then within like 3 minutes, they're telling us everything in these little codes. I'm like, it happened 100% of the time. They always talk. So even when they think they're being recorded, they still lie. But the stakes are usually higher. All right. Which appears more open to your ideas? Is it the woman in photo A or the woman in photo B? Raise your hand if you believe it is A. Okay, please have a seat if your hand is raised, and then take a good look at her face. And if you paid attention to her face, which one? Now, what if, let's say the gal in B has been working out a lot lately. She's showing off the biceps like those dudes do in their pictures, you know, where they push them out. Maybe the air conditioning's too high. Maybe her back is sore. Million reasons. Let's take a look at her face. So the face is important. Clearly, for some, we're still missing some of that critical information with masking, but when we look past that, we can still see in their eyes. All right. All things being equal, women are more willing to lie during a negotiation than men are. Raise your hand if you believe that is true. Okay, please have a seat. And for the women who raised your hands, we're going to talk later.